One calm word from Obama shook Trump harder than any debate ever could. And the way Trump unraveled on live TV made the entire country stop and watch. The lights were almost blinding. Rows of cameras pointed toward the stage. Red tally lights glowing, ready to beam every tantrum into millions of living rooms across the country. The town hall had been built as one of the biggest of the year, and you could feel it in the air. People weren't just watching. They were waiting, restless, hungry for a moment that would define the night. President Donald Trump walked onto the stage at a community center auditorium in Columbus, Ohio. Chest forward, chin tilted slightly higher than usual. The applause started strong, but it wasn't the thunderous roar he liked. A few people rose to their feet, others clapped from their seats, and some just held their phones up, already recording the moderator. A veteran journalist named Stephen Radcliffe sat at the opposite end of the stage, shuffling through cards. He had hosted dozens of these before, but tonight felt different. The country had been rattled by a string of crises: economic instability, rising tension in overseas conflicts, in bitter fights in Congress. People were already tense. And now the nation's two most prominent political figures, one current president, one former, were circling each other without even being in the same room. And then came the moment barely 5 minutes in. Radcliffe leaned forward, glasses low on his nose, and asked the question everyone at home had been waiting for. "Mr. President," he said, his voice steady earlier this week. Former President Barack Obama was asked to give his assessment of your administration's handling of the crisis. He didn't give a long explanation. He just used one word: chaos. What do you say to that? The word hung in the air like smoke. You could almost hear the audience lean forward in their seats. Trump's jaw shifted. His eyes darted across the crowd, and he let out a sharp breath through his nose for a split second. His lips pressed together in a thin line as if he were fighting to hold something back. But that split second passed, and you could see the storm coming. He leaned into the microphone, his voice louder than it needed to be: chaos. That's what he said. "Obama, let me tell you something. Nobody has done more for this country than me. Nobody. We were handed a mess and now they want to call it chaos. Give me a break." His words spilled out fast, his tone already veering off course. Some members of the audience clapped, mostly in the front rows where his supporters sat, but further back people stayed quiet, their eyes locked on him. Not with admiration, but with the kind of attention people give when they're watching someone teeter on the edge. Radcliffe tried to steady the moment. "Mr. President, if I may," but Trump wasn't letting go. "This is typical. The media loves him. They love anything. He says he can say chaos. And suddenly it's a headline. Meanwhile, we're doing incredible things. Things no one thought possible. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about one word, one word. Can you believe it?" The rant had begun and the audience could feel it. People at home felt it too. Twitter notifications buzzed across phones. Clips were already being cut and shared by producers. Backstage, Obama's single calm word was being set against Trump's thunderous volley of sentences. The contrast was undeniable. What made it more powerful was that Obama wasn't even in the room. He didn't need to be. His voice had traveled from an interview days before into this hall in Columbus, where it was now shaping the entire conversation. Somewhere in the third row, a young college student whispered to the person beside him. It's like Obama dropped a match and Trump's setting the whole house on fire. The person next to him didn't answer. They just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the stage as Trump's hands sliced through the air. With every angry word, the camera zoomed in, catching every twitch, every flush of red across his face. The president wasn't answering questions anymore. He was fighting ghosts. Obama's calm, the media's headlines, the audience's silence. And that was only the opening minutes of the town hall. But the real story started long before Trump walked onto that stage. It began with Obama's single word spoken days earlier, and the way it spread across the country like wildfire. It hadn't come from a speech. It hadn't been shouted from a podium or posted in a long angry thread online. It came in the middle of a calm, measured interview. Barack Obama was seated on a worn leather chair inside a modest studio in Phoenix, Arizona, speaking with a local news anchor about leadership responsibility and the challenges of governing through crisis. The anchor, a woman named Julia Reyes, had been walking him through a series of questions about global instability and domestic unrest. When she asked, "If you had to describe the current administration in one word, what would it be?" Obama didn't rush. He leaned back slightly, his hands folded in his lap. Kber Iker let the silence stretch for a moment, almost as if he wanted the audience to think alongside him, and then in that even deliberate tone that had carried him through countless addresses to the nation, he said, "Chaos." That was it. One word, no further explanation. Julia blinked. The silence after his answer lasted longer than the pause before it. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something profound had just been dropped on the table. She tried to prod him. "Could you elaborate on that?" But Obama only gave a small smile, that familiar half-smile that people remembered from his presidency, and replied, "I think the American people know what I mean." The clip aired that same evening on a regional broadcast, but within hours, it had traveled far beyond Arizona. A young producer clipped it and uploaded it to Twitter. That post exploded, gaining 500,000 views in less than 3 hours. Then CNN picked it up, followed by MSNBC. Within a day, late-night hosts in Los Angeles and New York were replaying it, each building monologues around that single word. Jimmy Fallon made a joke about how one word from Obama got more attention than 2 hours of Trump speeches. Stephen Colbert leaned into the irony. Obama speaks for 10 seconds and Trump spends 10 minutes yelling about it. Even conservative commentators couldn't ignore it. Some tried to dismiss it as cheap wordplay, while others admitted grudgingly that it had struck a nerve. But it wasn't just pundits. Ordinary people latched onto it on Instagram. A teacher from Des Moines posted a photo of her chaotic paper-strewn classroom with the caption, "My students after recess?" Obama was right on TikTok. Teenagers cut together clips of Trump shouting during press conferences interlaced with the word chaos in bold white letters. Memes, GIFs, and parody videos multiplied by the hour. It was the simplicity that gave it power in a nation tired of long speeches and endless debates. Obama had boiled his critique down to one word that everybody understood. It didn't need explanation because people could fill in their own examples. The mixed messages during crisis. The revolving door of staff in the White House. The midnight tweets that sent markets tumbling whether you supported Trump or not. You knew what Obama was pointing to inside the White House. Aides took notice almost immediately. By the second day, advisors were circulating reports showing the word dominating headlines across platforms. Cable news panels had split screens. Obama's calm face on one side, bold letters spelling chaos on the other. Every outlet was milking it. One staffer privately admitted to a colleague, "It's like he branded us with it." Trump, of course, didn't take it quietly. According to insiders, when the clip was shown to him on Air Force One, he slammed his hand on the armrest and shouted one word. That's all he has. Chaos. Pathetic. But the frustration was written on his face. He knew deep down that one word had done more damage than an hour-long speech ever could. Back in Phoenix, Julia Reyes gave another interview about her sit-down with Obama. She confessed she hadn't expected that answer, and she'd been surprised by how quickly it took off. It felt like a moment where less really was more. She explained he didn't lecture, he didn't rant, he just trusted people to connect the dots. And connect the dots they did. By the time the town hall in Columbus was announced, Obama's word had become a constant drumbeat. Protest signs carried it, editorial cartoons printed it, even bumper stickers appeared overnight with big block letters spelling chaos across them. It was no longer just a comment. It had become a rallying cry. So when Stephen Radcliffe brought up that word during the town hall, he wasn't just quoting Obama. He was channeling everything that had built up in the days since. For the viewers at home, Obama's voice lingered in the background, calm and unshaken, while Trump's reaction promised to show whether he could rise above it or collapse under its weight. But as soon as Trump started speaking, it became clear he couldn't let the word go. He had to fight it, and in fighting it, he gave it even more life. The auditorium in Columbus wasn't particularly large, but it felt charged like too many emotions had been crammed into one space. Rows of folding chairs stretched back toward the walls filled with a mix of supporters wearing red caps, undecided voters, curious to see the president up close. And critics who had come more for the spectacle than the politics television crews lined the sides, their lenses trained forward like watchful eyes that never blinked. Every cough, every shuffle, every burst of applause was magnified under the hot stage lights. Stephen Radcliffe adjusted his glasses again, his fingers brushing the stack of cards on the small table between him and the president. He had prepared questions about policy, about health care shortages in small towns, about foreign negotiations with Tehran, about the labor strikes rippling through the Midwest. But now, after Trump's first eruption, everyone knew the town hall wasn't going to be about policy. It was going to be about one word on the stage. Trump rocked back slightly in his chair, tugging at his suit jacket as he leaned into the microphone. His face was flushed, not just from the heat of the lights, but from the weight of the question he couldn't shake. Every time he mentioned Obama, his voice spiked higher. Every time he said chaos, his hands sliced the air as if cutting the word into pieces would lessen its sting. Look, Obama had 8 years. Trump barked, pointing a finger toward the audience. 8 years, and what did we get? Nothing. Weakness. Total weakness. And now he says chaos. He should be ashamed. I built the strongest economy this country has ever seen. Ask anybody. We were respected again. We were winning again. Then we get hit with things nobody could have seen coming. Nobody. And suddenly it's chaos. Ridiculous. Just ridiculous. The audience was split near the front. A middle-aged man in a navy polo clapped loudly, nodding along with every word. 2 rows behind him, a young woman with glasses whispered to her friend, "He still hasn't answered the question." Another group sat stone-faced, recording the entire exchange on their phones. Radcliffe tried to steer the discussion back toward policy. "Mr. President, if I could redirect for a moment, what specific measures are you taking to address the shortages in hospital staffing across the Midwest?" Trump waved his hand dismissively. "We're doing everything, absolutely everything. Doctors, nurses, they love me. They tell me all the time, nobody has done more for healthcare workers than I have. Nobody. But do they talk about that? No. They want to talk about Obama. They want to talk about chaos. That's all they want." The moderator's lips tightened, but he held his composure. The audience, however, was visibly shifting. Some leaned forward eagerly, thrilled at the spectacle. Others sat back with folded arms, almost embarrassed by what they were watching. The tension wasn't just in what Trump was saying. It was in how far he was drifting from the original question in the wings of the stage. White House staffers shifted uneasily. They exchanged quick glances, some whispering under their breath, knowing the night was spiraling into exactly what they had feared. A spectacle that would dominate headlines for days for all the wrong reasons. And then it got worse. Radcliffe cautiously pushed again. "Mr. President, just so we're clear, are you saying former President Obama's assessment is unfair?" Trump's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward so close to the microphone that the audio technician winced at the distortion. "Unfair. It's not just unfair. It's dishonest. It's a disgrace. He knows it. The media knows it. And you know it too." His voice boomed across the hall, echoing against the walls. "They want to paint a picture of chaos because they can't stand that we're winning. They can't stand it." Some applause broke out, scattered and uneven. But just as many people sat in silence, and silence on live television under hot lights is louder than applause. Radcliffe didn't interrupt this time. He simply let the president talk the cameras, catching every flicker of frustration across his face. The audience at home could feel the imbalance. Obama had needed only a calm pause and a single word, while Trump was now 3 minutes into a tirade that hadn't touched a single policy issue in living rooms across the country. Families exchanged looks. Some shook their heads, others laughed nervously, and some simply stared, trying to reconcile the image of a president unraveling under the weight of one word. And the moderators, producers, and journalists backstage all knew the same thing. This was no longer about healthcare or foreign policy or even the town hall. It was about how a calm, deliberate word could corner the most powerful man in the world. But the boiling point hadn't been reached yet. What came next would show just how far the president was willing to go to fight a word he couldn't control. By the time the first 20 minutes of the town hall had ticked away, it was clear the evening was no longer a measured exchange of questions and answers. The auditorium had turned into an arena with every sentence swinging like a punch and every pause feeling like a chance for someone to strike back. Trump leaned into his chair, but there was no sense of relaxation. His posture was tight, his gestures sharper than usual, and his voice carried the kind of force that made even the back rows feel like they were being shouted at. His tone wasn't polished for persuasion anymore. It was fueled by frustration, ready to knock down whatever target he could grab. "You know what this is?"